as we know, people are hiking, lovely weather for hiking. People have family commitments, and two of our members can't join us now because of load shedding. They need to understand the principle of UPS, so maybe they'll get it at some point. And can I just start with Carol is going to read for us the objects of Rotary. Carol, unmute yourself, please, and speak to us.
I will. The objects of Rotary. The object of Rotary is to encourage and foster the ideal of service as a basis of worthy enterprise and to encourage and foster. Second, first, the development of acquaintance as an opportunity for service. Second, high ethical standards in business and professions, the recognition of the worthiness of all useful occupations. Are you putting it up on the screen for me? And the dignifying of each Rotarian's occupation as an opportunity to serve society. Third, the application of the ideal of service in each Rotarian's personal, business, and community life. Fourth, the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace through a world of fellowship of business and professional persons, united in the ideal of service.
Thank you, Carol. And then David Crossley is going to welcome those that do not feel welcome yet.
Thank you, Leon. I've just got to find the stuff. So just give me a second to do that. This is always a challenge because I'm using one device here and I'm not on the computer. I try and keep away from the computer as far as possible when I'm out of, here we go. So just give me a second. Sorry about this. Okay. So I'm hoping all these people are here, but if they're not, I'm going to welcome them anyway, whether it's with us or in absentia. So always nice to welcome our district governor, Anna Marie Mostert. Nice to have you with us, Anna Marie, and I hope you enjoy this hour of fellowship, even though we're a bit virtual.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David.
I also like to welcome your Assistant Governor, Peter James Smith. I can't see the present list at the moment, but Peter, if you're there, welcome once again to this second meeting that you've been to, I think. And then I'm not sure if Alice Mayer is present. Alice, are you there, District Secretary?
Yeah, I think she's...
Yes, I am. Sorry, we're having load shedding. So I'm just...
Oh dear. We're expecting load shedding at 8 o'clock, but it may not happen. But Alice, it's lovely to have you on board. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
And then our Johannesburg Rotary President, Nadine Mitchley. Nadine, are you there?
Nadine,
sorry.
Not here yet.
Not serious, okay. And then I heard James Lohman. So James, nice to hear your voice again from the St. Stephen's Interact. You are the president. And yes, we will introduce our speaker a little bit later on. I would like to recognize Carol, who is our Rotary Ann president. I hope I'm right about that, Carol. I get a little bit out of touch.
Yeah.
And any other Rotarians who may be knocking around. Past presidents, Leon, Peter Alexander, you're both past presidents. I'm not sure who else is there. But can I, Grace, rather extend a warm welcome to other Rotarians from other clubs, my fellow Rotarians with Johannesburg, and any guests that we may have there. You're all very welcome. Lovely to have you on board, and I hope you enjoy the evening.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David. I just want to mention Emmanuel is with us. So Emmanuel is our resident Rotarian from the Rotary Club of Accra, Ghana. So it's his home away from home here. It's always a pleasure to have you. And just to tell you that I've managed to rope Emmanuel onto one of our District 9400 portfolios. So that's how committed he is and to our club. So awesome having you, Emmanuel. And then obviously we have Ntombi. This is, I think, a second or third meeting. Ntombi, we're still waiting for your form to induct you. And hopefully Gonna have that.
I just sent it now. She's officially a member, I think, with the phone.
Is she officially a member? Okay, Jean.
Yeah.
Sorry for the delay.
And then we've got Patricia. Patricia, where are you from?
Hi, I'm from Uganda. I'm a guest of Rotarian Emmanuel.
Oh, yes. Oh, wonderful. Welcome. It's great to have our fellow African Rotarians with us from the rest of Africa. And just a heads up that we are, Africa is polio free, and that is a wonderful celebration. And I'm sure you all are joining us in celebrating that wonderful achievement. Over to you, Leon. Thank you.
Okay, just to say those that have not been welcomed, Angela, myself, Grace, John, David, Peter, Jean, you're also welcome.
Thanks.
I did try to include everybody. It's a bit difficult when you're off site, so to speak.
And Kim will be introduced a bit more completely just now, but meanwhile, she may feel welcome too, our guest speaker. Okay, so now I'm going to ask, now I'm a bit confused. I've got the agenda in front of me, and there's President's slot, President Grace, but in brackets, John. So I wasn't sure what was happening there, but President Grace, will you say your piece? You unmute. Grace, you're muted. That's better.
Put John's name in brackets so that I remembered that he asked for a slot, so that I didn't forget about him. But just to give you a few things that are happening for the month of September, we've got a really, really busy September. So tonight we've got a phenomenal speaker. On the 15th of September, we have past District Governor Shab Alawar. He's from California, USA. He also heads up a whole peace project. He's going to be our guest speaker on why it's important to connect the world when you're talking about peace. So DG Anna Marie, I think that might be one that you would like to attend. Then on the 22nd of September, we have Ryan Hogg. He's a cyclist, but he's not going to be talking about cycling. He's going to be talking about the art of making clocks. And then the 29th of September, we've got a Rotarian also from the USA, Alan Test, who's going to be speaking to us about Rotary fellowships and how we can use Rotary fellowships to grow our clubs, as well as identify new projects. So also very exciting there. Then also on the 19th of September, I've been invited to speak. I'm the guest speaker at the Rotary Club of Alandar. It's in India. It's our time 2:30. And I'm also going to be speaking about peace and our district governor's project about having 100 peace mediators is going to feature in that talk as well. So we will be sending that information. So we will be talking about ARCOM, and both PDG Shab Alawar as well as this Rotary Club, Anna Marie, have expressed an interest in getting involved in those 100 peace mediators that we are trying to put together. So I think very exciting stuff. And then the last announcement I've got to make is that we have a World Polio Day on the 24th of October. Some really big, exciting plans there. So we'll be sending the information through to you regarding that. I don't want to take too much time. And without further ado, I would like to just give Jean a few minutes. He's got an exciting project he wants to tell us about. Jean?
Okay, thank you. I was hoping that Max would be here himself, but he's not. But pretty much there is an institution that is called Children of Fire. It's an NGO. It deals with children that have been pretty much hurt by a fire. It's disabled children. And I was thinking it could be worthwhile to perhaps see how we can support them as well, and how we can see if our vision or our mission can align to them and see how we can start supporting them. So I would prefer for Max, when he's gonna join, to perhaps give you more details about this, because it's something that he spoke to me about, and he is very close to the organization. They are based in Auckland Park. And yeah, so I think it's best we wait for him to be there to get all those details. But at least for you to have it on the back of your mind that there could be a very exciting opportunity for us to meaningfully contribute towards our communities. Yeah.
Okay, Jean, we look forward to meeting Max and hearing more about the Children of Fire. I think you mentioned the last time one of the computers that we've rebuilt should possibly go to that organization. So we'll wait to hear more from that. Before I hand back to Leon, we are going to be live streaming Kim's talk on Facebook. So for those that don't want your video showing on the screen, you can turn your video off. So as soon as Kim goes starts going live, we will live stream. So over to you, Leon. Thank you.
Is it over to me? Must be. Okay. Jean, we had, I think Max talked to our club about 4 years ago. So we, if he was in charge at the time. So we have had the talk and the pamphlets, and at the time we were positive about it. I think there wasn't follow-up from our side, but it was something that our members were very interested in, and it was a very good talk. And the member that grabbed it at the time emigrated or moved or something a few weeks later. So that ball dropped, but definitely it's something that we should pursue, because I think most people were interested in it. Next is David Crossley again. Sorry that you have to listen to him again, but he's going to introduce our speaker. David.
Thank you, Leon. Just before I introduce our guest speaker, can I just correct one thing, Grace? In terms of Ray Hogg, the speaker in September, he is actually an ex-professional cyclist. Now, at the moment, I am fanatically glued to the TV when it comes to the Tour de France. And he was a professional cyclist, as well as an adventurer, fought in Vietnam, was a Hells Angel, and has quite an interestingly checkered history. But we'll be talking about his experiences as a cyclist and also as a semi-professional squash player. So he should be quite interesting. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of information before I go to introduce Kim, which I'm going to do now. I'm actually, because Kim and I sort of share a similar profession, if you like, mine slightly less exciting than hers. I have heard Kim speak before, and I've never been disappointed, whether it's a conference or whether she's come to our company. But I think, you know, it's uncertain times, and a lot of people think about retirement as having enough money. But retirement is not always about having enough money. It's having enough life and knowing what you're going to do with that life. And so the old insurance salesman has morphed into a coach, a financial planner, a lifestyle financial planner. And Kim, I'm not trying to sort of tar you with all those brushes, but Kim is, I would say, a lifestyle financial planner, but she specializes in retirement. And for an awful lot of Rotarians, that is either a reality on the horizon or it's already become a reality. And having heard her philosophy and read one of her books, which has got the word retirement as an MEANT in it, I'm very keen to hear what she has to say to us, because she has pearls of wisdom which we can certainly imbue and we can certainly listen to. She's with an organization called Chartered Wealth, who specialize in retirement and people who are looking to retire. So not only do you have a degree in psychology, which must help with the clients, Kim, but you're also very successful in your field. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to the Rotary Club of Johannesburg and the guest tonight, Kim Potgieter. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you, David, and thank you for inviting me to share your meeting with you tonight. I'm probably going to disappoint you, David. I'm not speaking about retirement at all tonight. So for any of you that want to talk about retirement, I'll have to come back again. Tonight, what I'm going to be doing is sharing with you some of my learnings from Dr. Brené Brown. And I'm going to be sharing with you also around this concept of us going out there and doing brave work. And the teaching that I'm going to be sharing with you today is a little bit different to the way we potentially.
We've lost you, Kim. Okay, is that better now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. No device connected. So where did I get to? I think start again. Okay, I was just saying today, David, I hope to not disappoint you all, because tonight I'm not going to be discussing retirement at all. I'm going to be discussing some learnings that I've had from Dr. Brené Brown, and I'm going to be sharing with you around this work of being vulnerable and around showing up wholeheartedly so that we can have really tough conversations. And for all of you that do all of this great work in the Rotary, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say we need to, be able to have different kind of conversations. And in order to do that, we potentially need to be coming in with our whole hearts, authentically showing up, and to be able to do this work. So I am going to be sharing my screen the way I've got 30 minutes that Grace has given me. The work that I'm going to be sharing with you, I normally do over 3 days. So just so that you know, I'm giving you a very condensed version, but it will still, I think, have an impact on you, and I hope you find it valuable. I will have a presentation. I will be showing you a video from Dr. Brené Brown that I've got of her sharing the concept, which is just a short video. And I will be potentially asking you at the end if you've got any questions, and I'll be able to share with you. But for now, I'll share with you my screen. Grace, you'll just let me know that you can see it. We can see it. Okay, great. So the concept that I'm talking about tonight is called Dare to Lead. Now, where does Dare to Lead come from? It comes from a book, Dare to Lead, that I read in 2018. But just to give you a little bit more background to Dr. Brené Brown, for those of you that don't know her, she is one of the most watched TED video. Her TED video in 2010, called The Power of Vulnerability, has over 42 million views right now of people watching it. She also has written many books. I've put 5 of the books that she's written on the screen. These are 5 books that have had a huge impact on my life, which started 9 years ago when I read the book called The Gifts of Imperfection. And what The Gifts of Imperfection is about is how none of us are perfect, and just how we need to come to the world as our whole selves and not trying to just show the world the parts that we think the world wants to see. She then went on to write on Daring Greatly, and Daring Greatly is really what I'm going to be talking to you about tonight, this whole concept of leaning into our vulnerability. And when we can lean into our vulnerability, it's the time in our lives when we can be truly courageous. And Rising Strong, the next book, was very much around when you come into the world and you're showing up authentically and you are being vulnerable, what will happen is you will fall. And the important part when you do ever fall in life is how do you get back up, and how do you come and help other people once you have fallen. So that is the Rising Strong. And then her next book was Braving the Wilderness, where she says, now that we've done all this great work, and which I'm going to be sharing with you tonight, how do we then go out into the world and spread it? How do we make this work become like really us doing it, and then we influencing other people? So I heard you talk a lot around peace and having meetings on peace. All of this work leans for that. If we can have societies who are living this way with these kind of principles, we would have a lot more peace than we've got right now. And then she came out with this Dare to Lead on leadership. And that's mainly what I'm going to be talking to you about tonight as well, is leaderships. How do we all be better leaders?
and she's condensed the 4 books, Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and Braving the Wilderness. She's condensed them all into a leadership course, and that is in her book, Dare to Lead. And then for those of you that enjoy tonight and want to find out a little bit more, I wanted to put up her video, her recording that's on Netflix. And if any of you have got Netflix, I highly recommend that you watch it. It's called The Call to Courage. It's a 1-hour documentary that was broadcast right around the world, and we do have it on our Netflix. Totally encourage you to watch it. And for those of you that are in a relationship, even more, I encourage you to watch the recording together. So I was very fortunate. I had applied to Dr. Brené Brown's courses in the past, and yeah, she's very strict on who gets onto her courses. But in 2019, I was fortunate enough to be chosen, and I went to the States for a week, and I learned from herself. And what I came out of it is with a qualification called I'm now a Dare to Lead facilitator. And that's why I can do these kind of talks, and I can actually train people. That's a 3-day course that I run, training you actually to become a Dare to Lead facilitator. So just to start the work out, I wanted to share with you this definition of what a leader is. I find a lot of people get confused about what a leader is. And a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and the processes, and who has the courage to develop that potential. And that is really the word that we need to be sharing at these times that we're going through at the moment, and where the world is in a pandemic and everybody's not sure what's happening. And if we watch how some leaders are acting, we know that they're not acting with this kind of definition in mind. But this work for me has been revolutionary. And I would say the word revolutionary in as David said, being a financial planner, but more than that, it's my role as a director of the company. It's my role in mentoring people, in growing people. It's been a mother, and it's been a wife. So this work touches all aspects of your life. And I think this is such a beautiful definition of what we can all aspire to if we want to be a good leader. This work has also run in a lot of schools, and it has helped teachers and it has helped pupils understand what true leadership is. So because I wanted to talk around this concept of courage and where does it come from, I thought I would just share the definition, because it's obviously often really misunderstood. What is courage? You know, we think of courage often as being on the battlefield, and how do we enact on the battlefield. But in real terms, I mean, this courage, and the core Latin word, it's meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And this work is very much that. It's heart work. It's how we act, and it's how we come across. It's all of these concepts put together. And very important for all of you, it's really, as I said in the beginning, it's authentically showing up, and it's authentically showing up and bringing your whole self to this realm of leadership. I wanted to share with you next the quote that Brené uses in the start of her work, and it really counts for everything that we're going to be discussing tonight. And I think if you look at your work as a Rotarian, how you do your work, it's very important, this kind of quote. And I just want to share it with you. It's a Theodore Roosevelt quote, and according to Brené, this quote has been what has made her be able to, let's think about it, do this great work. When she originally did her talk in 2010, as she said, the first thing that she did after the talk, when she realized people were actually watching it, because she hadn't even realized there were going to be so many people watching it. And then she started reading what critics were saying about her and the way she acted and the way she came across. And she said what she realized after all of that is she had to stop worrying about all of these critics. And she had to, in order for her to do this very important work in the world, she had to go out there and worry less about the critics. And this is the quote: "It's not the critic who counts.
not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly. And I say that for all of us doing this kind of work, going out and being leaders, we have to really find it inside ourselves, that courage that we go out and do this work that we truly believe in, and that at least we know we're doing it with our whole hearts, and we're worrying less about what everybody thinks of what we're doing and more about just making a difference in the world, and a difference that our world at the moment needs more than ever. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask you all to put this in the chat before we actually go into the concept of sharing the video on vulnerability. I wanted you all to share in the chat what you grew up believing vulnerability was. So you've been learning all these years that you've been around, alive, and if I had to say the word vulnerability to you, what do you believe the word vulnerability means? And I'll just give you a hint there. Grace has gone with it. First, weakness. And I would say that 90% of people that I do this workshop for have the past belief that it is weakness. So any of you can put in the chat. It is just nice to see the beliefs before we go into what it really is, vulnerability. What did you grow up believing? And if you could just put it in the chat at the bottom, vulnerability is. Showing one's true feelings, not being able to keep up with my peers. What can hurt you? It's quite incredible how vulnerability's got such a bad name. Anybody else got what vulnerable? Sharing my hurts. Laying out your feelings bare. Yeah, and we kind of feel quite naked when we come in and show our vulnerability. Open to failing. Being honest. That's a nice positive one. What about being honest to people? So what I just wanted you to have that time just to think about what it meant to you. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share from Dr. Brené Brown's point of view what vulnerability is. And just to introduce it, in order to have courage and in order to be a true leader, we need to be able to understand this concept of being able to lean into our vulnerability, because our biggest strength comes from actually being able to be vulnerable. And yet for most of us, as we've seen, we're taught from such a young age that as soon as we feel vulnerability, as soon as we feel emotions, we should hold it in, we should not show it, because then what is going to come across is that we were actually being weak. So I'm going to hand over to the video to Dr. Brené Brown, and you're going to hear her insights on it, and then I'm going to come back and share with you.
The question I always get is, where do I start with vulnerability? I'm willing to embrace the suck. I am starting to believe that it's an important emotion to be able to deal with, and if we want to be brave, where do I start? And the answer is always the same. Start with the myths. When I wrote Daring Greatly, there were 4 myths, but since doing all the leadership work, I now have 6 myths of vulnerability that we need to tackle if we're going to really be able to lean in. And I'll tell you why, because, I mean, just wherever you are right now, look around. I mean, I'm here with, 10, 12 people here that are helping me put this together. And raise your hand if you were raised believing that vulnerability was weakness. So every hand in here goes up, and I'm sure where you are too, like, yeah. But here's the weird part, here's the catch. Raise your hand if you were taught that it was important to be brave when you were growing up. Right, this is the rub. Like we were told, be brave, don't be vulnerable, but there is no courage without vulnerability. And so we have to bust these myths that keep us from being real and honest and authentic. So 6 myths. Number 1, vulnerability is weakness. We've talked about it a little bit, but let me dig into when I first started the research outside of the leadership world, when I first started 20 years ago, and we started asking people, what is vulnerability? The answers ranged from the first date after my divorce, trying to get pregnant after my second miscarriage, sitting with my wife who has cancer, making plans for our toddlers, starting my own business, getting fired, having to fire someone, saying I love you first. Look, there is no equation where any of those things equals weakness. Is it hard? Hell yes. Is it uncomfortable? Brutally. Is it awkward? To the bone. Is it weakness? No. It's brave. It's brave to show up and let ourselves be seen. It's just not weakness. There are 2 paradoxes, though, that make it hard. Is when we see someone being vulnerable, we're like, oh man, yeah, vulnerability looks brave in other people, but it still feels like weakness to us. And number 2, when I meet you, the first thing I look for when I meet someone is their vulnerability, their humanity, their authenticity. But it's the last thing I want to show you in me. So number 1 myth, just not the case. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is our most accurate measure of courage. And in fact, I can say that now in an empirically based way because we have the Daring Leader Assessment, which is basically assessing courage by measuring how vulnerable you're willing to be. Then there's myth number 2. I don't do vulnerability. And one of my favorite stories about this, and it actually ties into another myth, I was literally working with rocket scientists and doing this work on Dare to Lead. And a guy came up to me during a break and said, hey, I like the work. I just want to tell you, I actually don't do vulnerability. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, I'm a payload engineer. If I'm vulnerable, shit falls out of the sky. And, and as a Houstonian, I'm like, yeah, like ixnay the vulnerability. Like I want to keep my front and backyard clear of crap falling from the sky. And I said, well, tell me more. Like, tell me what the hardest part of your work is. And he said, well, it's not the engineering part, it's the leading part. I lead a team now, and a pretty big team, and that part is hard. And I said, what about it specifically is hard? And he goes like, well, I have a guy that's worked for me for the past, and I think he said a year, and 3 quarters in a row, his deliverables are completely off, and now I'm starting to get in trouble because he's not doing his work. And I said, well, have you talked to him about it? And he said, yeah, but it's too hard. And one time he almost cried, and I can't do it. It just feels like, I don't know, it feels vulnerable? I asked. And he's like, God, yes. We all do vulnerability. Look, if you're watching this and you don't ever in your life experience uncertainty, feelings of risk or emotional exposure, then, call me. We'll chat. But we're all vulnerable. The question is, do you do it consciously and knowingly, or do you do it unconsciously? Do you do vulnerability with awareness, or does vulnerability do you? That's the only question. And for this guy, and we're going to talk about this in a minute as another myth, he confused systemic vulnerability with relational vulnerability. Like, yeah, I'm not interested in vulnerable systems. I want surgeons and engineers and, security and internet protocols to be not vulnerable. But the people who are implementing and running those invulnerable systems must be vulnerable, because when they're not, that's when we start hiding mistakes. That's when we start not owning things. That's when we start not giving people feedback who are making mistakes. Then your invulnerable system that you're trying to build is at the greatest jeopardy when the people running it refuse to lean into uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Myth number 3, I can go it alone. Here's the thing. We are neurobiologically wired for connection with each other. It's why we're here. And the heart of connection is vulnerability. The one need we have that supersedes all of our needs is to be seen and known and loved. And if you're not vulnerable, you can't be seen. So you can't go it alone. You're pushing against biology. Myth number 4, you can engineer the uncertainty and discomfort out of vulnerability. So this is the 2 pieces. 1, don't confuse systemic vulnerability and relational vulnerability. And I spend a lot of time in technology, a lot of time working with engineers. There's a great story in the book about working with a group of very elite subsea engineers at Shell, where we have to spend a lot of time really just pulling apart. I'm not asking for vulnerable systems. I'm asking for vulnerable real humans to build those systems, because that's the best shot you have when people will be real. The second piece about engineering the uncertainty and discomfort out of vulnerability is, I've seen a lot of people use my work in ways that is really, for me, kind of unimaginable, especially where they try to say, we can build an app or an algorithm for vulnerability so it's more certain. I'm going to be vulnerable, but I'm going to test it first to make sure there's no actual risk involved. That bankrupts vulnerability by definition. Myth number 5, trust comes before vulnerability. And people always ask me, like, I want to be vulnerable, but I need to really trust someone first. But how do I trust them if I'm not ever vulnerable? And the way I talk about it, and we'll talk about this more when we talk about trust, is trust and vulnerability is a very slow building and stacking. I don't meet you and say, look, I'm going to be, hey, nice to meet you, Kurt. Here's my deepest, darkest secret. Let's be best friends. That's tumbling. That's like the bad Jenga move. That's like pulling something from the wrong place. I just played a lot of Jenga over the holiday, so let me tell you. And it's in a life-size Jenga, so when it fell, it was like monumental. It was horrible. Anxiety, very bad anxiety for the Jenga. But we have to build slow like this. But if you're waiting till someone meets a trust test to be 1 ounce vulnerable, you're going to wait forever, because trust needs vulnerability, vulnerability needs trust. The last myth, and this is the big myth, that vulnerability is disclosure, that vulnerability is oversharing. Like, why do I need to be vulnerable? Like, I'm not going to tell everyone my hard things. And, people ask me all the time, like, I want to be a daring leader. How often do I need to cry at work? I'm like, whoa. Yikes. I have met vulnerable leaders who disclose very little personally, but who are very vulnerable and open. And I have met leaders who disclose everything and are not really vulnerable at all. Vulnerability is not disclosure. Live tweeting your bikini wax, not vulnerability. Sharing intimate details of your divorce and on Facebook, not really vulnerability. Vulnerability is, I'm showing up, I'm present, I'm leaning in, and I'm keeping the armor off. That's what vulnerability is. So it's really helpful to dig into those 6 myths of vulnerability and figure out which ones do you cling on to, and what do you need to do to let go of them?
So I'm sure for many of you, you can identify with these myths, and in a way, I mean, for so many years, we've all been taught that we want to trust somebody before we're ever going to be vulnerable with them. That was a big one that I hear in workshops often, that people come up with. And then that other one, that I just don't do vulnerability. Yet my work with people, which is every day, as David said, I help people plan their retirements. And when people are coming in to plan their retirements, they are feeling incredibly vulnerable. And when I tell them that it's actually okay, that you can feel vulnerable, and that with feeling vulnerable, your next step is where you're going to be courageous, it changes everything. I think back to this work, and I am so grateful to having done it before we hit into the pandemic. We actually closed our whole company for 3 days in the beginning of this year, and we ran through the whole Dare to Lead course. So we 83 people, and all 83 of us did this work. And from the end of March, when we changed our whole business to go online and go home, we were talking to clients all day around their money and the potential that the markets had gone down and was it going to come back up again. At every moment, our clients were dealing with vulnerability. At every moment, we were doing with vulnerability. And just knowing that having this feeling didn't mean that we weren't being brave. In fact, it was the complete opposite. The fact that we were feeling it was that step for us to be getting the courage in order to be brave. So just to look back at these myths yourself and to think around them. And again, for you know, just hearing this for the first time, you might go, absolutely not, you know, I can't do this kind of work. But go out into your day and into being a leader, which you're doing all the time. And when you're in that position, just feel it and see how you respond differently when you're fully authentically showing up and you're more in touch with actually how you're feeling your way through it. So just to recap for you so that you do have the definition, I mean, it is the emotion we experience during times of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And thinking when it happens to you, stop yourself and say, okay, do I need to, as Brené talks around it, do I need to armor up, or do I just need to lean into the situation? And I thought I would share with you this concept of this arena and this cave that we're talking around through this concept of vulnerability. There are a whole lot of emotions that we all feel and a whole lot of emotions that we all experience. But there's also emotions that when we feel it, we do anything we can not to feel it. And those are around these concepts of shame, scarcity, fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. So when any of us, when those emotions start coming to us, okay, they're underpinned by vulnerability. So when they come to us, what we do is we want to block them out. And how we often block these kind of emotions out is we use perfectionism, where we try and get everything absolutely perfect so that we don't have to feel those emotions. We often have a concept of foreboding joy, where we're in a situation where we're feeling happy, and then we'll start thinking about the worst case scenario that could happen. And if this happens, how we'll feel about it. And also what we do is we numb. So for many people not to feel shame, scarcity, anxiety, what they'll do is they'll numb through maybe taking alcohol or medications or through watching too much Netflix. And all of these is to numb these kind of emotions. But what that's doing to our society is that we're also numbing the things that we really want to feel. So vulnerability also underpins love, belonging, and joy. So we're all aspiring to feel love and joy, and we want to belong somewhere. But because we're not allowing ourselves to experience vulnerability, because we don't want to feel the ones of shame, scarcity, fear, anxiety, and uncertainty, it's like a dimmer switch. So we're not feeling the one because we're not allowing ourselves to feel the other one. And what it's actually doing in our organizations is very much not getting all the things that I'm now showing you on the left. So when we can lean into our vulnerability, as Brené has shared, we can feel this courage. We have courage in order to do things differently. We also learn how to show empathy and feel empathy and be empathetic with other people. Automatically what that builds is trust. It builds a society where we are able to show our creativity, be creative, be innovative, because we're not scared of failing. As we talked about that arena, if we want to try new things and be creative, we might fail, but we need to do it in order for us to be able to do things differently. We're not really accountable if we can't lean into these emotions. Adaptable. The one big one is we don't want to have hard conversations. So for most of us, what we do is we think if we soften things when we tell people, what happens is then we're actually being kind. And Brené's whole theory on it is clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So when we're in a meeting and we don't agree with something, instead of talking about it, what we do is we go out of the meeting and we start having a meeting after the meeting. And what that's doing is that's festering up mistrust, which is what we don't want. And also we as people don't like feedback, because feedback's hard, and really feedback should be seen as growth. And again, with this vulnerability, if we can get it right, we can do problem solving, we can do ethical decision making, And what we've got at the end of the day is we then are resilient people who can cope with this uncertainty that we're facing. So just as a recap, to be able to lean into it means that we're going to be able to have courage, empathy, trust, innovation, which are all the things that organizations are crying out for. But at the same time, what we have to do then is we have to be courageous enough to lean into our vulnerability. And I just thought this is such a great picture of depicting it, because what we are doing as people is we think often it's this fear that's standing in our way of being courageous. But in the meantime, it's the armor that we are building up around ourselves in trying to pretend that we're perfect, trying to pretend we can do absolutely everything and not showing the people around us our whole selves. So when you next are in a position like this, just remember that's what's stopping us from connecting with the people that we're trying to lead. And we've built up this armor. So importantly is not to build up this armor. And another point that I just wanted to share with you before we close for some questions is we all have a lot of emotions, and most of us don't want to think about how many emotions we have. Brené is writing a book now that's going to come out at the end of this year, discussing 40 emotions that we all feel. Yet most of us can probably identify 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, not so many. And the big ones that a lot of people identify is this being angry or shutting down. So when you next are in a situation where you shut down or you feel angry, it's like an iceberg. You need to go down and say, what is it actually that I'm really feeling, and understand what that feeling is instead of shutting down and encouraging this emotional feeling. If you just have to think about it, we often think of ourselves as thinking beings that happen to think, but really what we are is feeling beings that happen to think. And it's just allowing ourselves to re-identify with these emotions and be able to put words to it and be able to explain how it is we're feeling. And I just wanted to share one exercise with you that I thought would be important and interesting for you all to do, and it's called the Square Squad. And to do this courageous work and to be this daring leader, what we need to do is we need to not worry about everybody's opinions, but we need to have people's opinions of us that really matter. Because if we worry about everybody's opinions in the world, we're not ever going to do anything. Because we're going to be too worried about what everybody's saying about us. But if we worry about nobody, that's also not good. So the exercise is really that you need to think about is, which people have you got in your life that you would put on your Square Squad? And the Square Squad is something that's quite small, and it's where you recognize who these people's opinions of you are that matter. And then you actually put their names on your Square Squad, and you let them know that they are in your Square Squad, that you're going to be leaning on them for this kind of feedback in order for you to be able to grow and to be the kind of leader that you want to be. And by them knowing it, what you're saying to them is, I don't want you just to be yes people. I want you to really give me important feedback that is going to help me grow and learn. So that's just one of the really great exercises and something that I thought I would share with you tonight. And then just, I'm going to unshare, but before I unshare, if anybody does want to contact me, my email address is info@kimporgete.co.za, and I do look forward to connecting with you. You know, my motto is be inspired, be brave, and be on purpose. So thank you very much. And if anybody does have any questions, I'd love to answer them. Obviously, as I said to you, this work is a 3-day, 20-hour journey. For me, it's been an 8-year journey of doing this kind of work in order to become a more daring leader. But I am very happy to answer any of your questions now.
Okay, anybody with questions, please raise your hand.
Or if anybody's got any comments, if this goes against what they thought being a good leader was, or if they can, you know, say that they've experienced it and they agree.
Yeah, just a comment. For me, my experience is that the society we currently live in make it seem as if being vulnerable is a thing. And whenever you, as a person, you try to be vulnerable or candid about the situation. Most of the time, in my experience, you know, it always came back negative. So how do we actually navigate knowing what we know in the current society? You know, how can we actually show that level of vulnerability in our day-to-day life, or even at work, for instance? Because often we are being accused of being emotional when we are being vulnerable. So it's just a question that I have now.
And I think it's a very relevant and a very important question. I mean, I teach this work mainly to the financial planning industry. So I have, you know, for many in the industry, then they say to me, Kim, how does this all work? So first place that it starts, and that I did have a video to show you of an orchestra playing, but I just looked at the time and I realized we didn't really have enough time for the video. The whole thing is, it starts with us. It starts with us actually just living it by example, because we can all meet each other and we can all armor up, and then we're not going to connect, and then we'll be in the mess that we are presently in as a society. So for me, my place is that you actually start there, and by leading by example. And the concept really is that most leaders that are doing badly with their leadership, and we have to just think around it, are very much armored leaders. They're leaders that come in and tell people what to do. They don't empower people. They don't encourage people to bring their innovation and creativity. So really, definitely would be the first place to start, is to lead by example. You need to start doing this work, feeling how it works, and feeling the responses you get, so that you can become a daring leader instead of an armored leader. And it is quite phenomenal to watch people, because the minute you give them permission that they can be this, because as I said to you, after all, we are feeling beings that happen to think. We start coming out of our head a lot, and we start showing up a lot more wholeheartedly. So I hope that answers your question. And it's to try it out in your organizations, and it's to try it out with the people you're leading. And you will always hear from people when they talk about leaders that they really respect and they really value, were leaders that believed in them, and leaders that weren't frightened to say how they were feeling. And yeah, I think it's just so vitally important to our country and to our world at the moment.
Happiness. Thank you.
Grace.
Yeah, Kim, being a lifestyle financial planner myself, and I've known you for many, many years, and we're in the same industry, and we do the same kind of work. But and I think maybe you've been asked this question many times, is especially for women, when women show vulnerability, especially in a man's world, which financial planning is very much a man's world, we sort of like, oh, you're just being a girl. So when we're at work, it's very difficult with our peers to be vulnerable. But when we're sitting in front of a client, that's what makes us as women really great financial planners, because we're empathetic and we're vulnerable. But we very seldom are able to show that vulnerability with our peers and in our personal life. Do you find that that is a common problem?
So Grace, of course it is, but I think it's the concept of what we think vulnerability is. So for many people, I mean, I love that one of oversharing. Vulnerability is not oversharing. Vulnerability is not sitting necessarily with somebody and crying because they're crying. That is not what it is. What it is it's actually being present in the moment, okay? And when the person is going through a difficult feeling, it's not making them stop talking about it. It's not covering it up. Because what we do in many places is, when something is uncomfortable, the minute it starts being uncomfortable, we'll try and cover it up, and we kind of don't let the person go there. So we don't let them fail. We don't let them share how they're feeling. But what this work is it's saying, just be comfortable with the person and meet them where they are. Okay, so it's not judging them, it's meeting them where they are. So as women, and that's why we are good with that, being empathetic, it's because we actually sit there with the person and we don't try and tell them not to feel what they're feeling. You know, like, put your big girl brookies up, or you know, men don't cry. So I think, again, it's showing up authentically. It's showing up wholeheartedly. So if for instance, as women, we should not be trying to pretend that we don't have emotions. We should not be trying to pretend that we're all the same. I've spoken to many men, and men are going through exactly the same, but they've been so taught through all the years from parents, from schooling, from everything, that they're not allowed to show it. And it's not really the truth, because what's happening is they're digging it all inside, and they keep it all inside. And what that's doing is it's causing them to have disappointments, to also have resentment, and it's also causing them to have way too much pressure on themselves. They way over expect from themselves. And then when they don't do it, they wonder why they're failing. In the meantime, it's not really failing at all. And that's why I like to share this work, because it's for men and for women. We all are feeling the same way.
Kim, can I ask a question? It's David
here. Of course,
David. Are you finding, you know, I'm like you, I'm also working remotely, and I'm dealing with essentially 3 teams of people that I'm responsible for online permanently. Do you get the impression that people are more open on a sort of a Teams or a Zoom type environment, or do you find that they are less sharing? Because I dropped a question on the chat there that I've got a couple of very quiet employees who are doing fine, but they do not show, they won't share their issues. They won't share their issues if I ask them, even on Zoom or Teams. And I don't particularly want to deal with that right now, because I'll have to deal with it at some stage. But are you finding it easier to get more out of clients or more out of people in an online environment rather than across a table?
So David, it also depends. I mean, online, people are very brave. I've heard people say things and give their kind of viewpoints on things in a lot braver way, because they're not face to face with you. But I've also seen a lot of covering up happening online. The favorite sentence that everybody's got when you ask them how they're doing at the moment, it's fine. So David, the only thing that I encourage is, when you have, like you say, too quieter people, you have to meet their kind of personality type. So if they're not people that like talking in big groups, I would do it on a one-on-one basis with them. And when they say that they're fine, it's to ask more coaching questions in understanding what fine looks like to them. And I think they open up in a better way like that. I'm a big one who advocates the Enneagram personality profiling, to actually understand people's personalities and understand that your perspective is not their perspective, and try and meet them with their perspective in order to be able to facilitate these conversations, to get them to open up to you more. So it is a bit of a mixture, but it is how it is at the moment, where we can cover up a lot of how we're feeling online. Amount of people that say that they much prefer this, and then when you actually delve into it, they're suffering from depression, and there's a lot of depression going around at the moment, and it's got to do with this whole concept of them feeling vulnerable, feeling that being vulnerable is the worst thing that they could have, because now they've been weak, and not allowing themselves to actually work through it. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that gives a bit of guidance. Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions or comments?
Kim, I think the thing you just said, people being vulnerable, and especially now, is it at the moment, are people feeling vulnerable because they're in a situation they don't feel they can control, and therefore not really sure how to react, how to deal with it?
It's exactly that. I mean, at the moment, we always kid ourselves, and for most people, we like to control things. So we kid ourselves that we can control things. But what this pandemic has done is it has taught us that we cannot control it. But what we can control is our attitude, how we show up, and that we stay true to our values. So it's so important that we work out what our main values are in life, and that we stay true to those values, so that when we're going through these kind of situations, we keep those values as our guiding light, as opposed to how we're feeling when we're feeling so emotional. So definitely right now, when we don't feel that we can control, what people do is they try and control more, and they start looking for something that they can control. And in real terms, that's doing more damage than us accepting, kind of like the serenity prayer, you know, what are the things in life that we can control, and controlling what we can. Very much for me, it's our attitudes, and it's very much that we live true to our values, even though things around us seem to be so uncertain.
Anybody else? Can I then just ask Angela, and I can ask her, even when muted, I can ask her to thank the speaker.
Kim, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the Rotary Club of Johannesburg for taking time out this evening to speak to us all. Today I had a really tough conversation with a patient, and it took courage to be vulnerable with her to show her how to be brave. So your talk really resonated with me. As president-elect of this club, I think I would really benefit from your Dare to Lead course. I hope everyone enjoyed your talk as much as I did. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. And thank you to everybody for having me. And yeah, I look forward to potentially hearing some of your feelings once you try it and you see how it works, and how you see how you get your own courage. And yeah, just all of us, I mean, this is a very important time in our lives to be brave, to go out there and make a difference, to not stay silent about hard things, and to make sure that we leave the world a better place than when we got here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
I noticed a guest, and I thought I'll just ask the guest to introduce himself and where he's from, and what does RCL stand for. RCL President David Johnson, would you like to speak to us for a few seconds? You're just unmute first.
I was having problems with my microphone. I wasn't sure it would work. Grace sort of indicated that centenary clubs should stick together. So I've really connected in order to join forces with your centennial interests. My club is the Rotary Club of London, and we've been a centennial club now for 10 years or so. Well, coming up to 10 years. You know, there aren't that many of us around. Now, over the next 10 years, there have become quite a lot of us. But at the moment, you know, your Rotary Club and our Rotary Club are one of a fairly small number of clubs. So I wanted to congratulate you on your centenary, and also to congratulate the speaker on a very interesting subject, which I wish I'd heard more of. I'm afraid that my technology overcome me, and my watch wasn't telling me the right time. That's all really. Greetings from the Rotary Club of London. We're about number 50 in the Rotary hierarchy, and we have been in London since 1911. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm assuming, Grace, you have contact details and might keep a connection going for a while, or Anna-Marie?
Yes, I have got their details, and there's Julian was going to join us as well, but he couldn't, but he promised that in the next 2 weeks he will. So we do have each other's contact details. We have each other on WhatsApp, so we are communicating. There's another guest, Leon, if you haven't spotted him, Julius. I don't know who Julius is, so if Julius would like to tell us something.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Julius from Ghana, and I saw I'm with the Rotary Club of Osuari. I saw your ad on my brother's page, Emmanuel Gamo, and I decided to share fellowship with you guys.
Emmanuel's bringing people.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and welcome, Julius.
Yeah, welcome, Julius.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
you very much to all our guests. I'd like to ask Anna-Marie if she has some words, pearls, anything of wisdom or anything that can empower us in any way. Anna-Marie.
Thank you so much, Leon. Yes, how do you come and share some words of wisdom when you speak after Kim? Kim, I think we met briefly at the WPO. I'm a member of WPO, and we're fortunate to hear your talk there as well. So fantastic, and thank you very much for sharing, you know, your the dare to dream and also dare to show up. And I think that everybody tonight here on the screen has shown up. And I think that is the one thing, you know, by choice, you could have been somewhere else. I know it's a lot in South Africa with the load shedding and everything else, but some of the members here in the club have shown up, and that's fantastic. But I want to say that, yes, your certificate, and also at the back of where Grace is sitting, we have the 1921. And David, yes, we are a little baby in you know, or the baby sister or baby brother in your eyes from London side. But next year, and COVID permit, we will be celebrating with Johannesburg in the district the centennial. And that's the first club on the continent of Africa, and we're very proud of that. And we hope it will be a hybrid event in person and then also online. Because, you know, we don't want people to travel to South Africa and then have a self-quarantine for a week before they can join us for an event. So we watch the space. But I want to say that I was privileged to be the president of this club in 2005. And that was when 100 years, when Rotary was 100 years old in the world. And we had the celebrations also in Johannesburg, and it was absolutely incredible. And some of the members here on this screen, and I want to say Peter and Carol and Leon, yes, absolutely. They were part of that celebration. So that's remarkable to find them here. And I want to tell you, for me as well, to see everybody is still around. But I want to say that, you know, it's where we stand on the shoulders of greatness. And Peter, you and Carol, and also the other seniors, really seniors in the club, I want to say thank you very much for flying the Rotary flag. We've heard from Kim to say, when everything fails, you go back to your values. And Rotary has the core values of incredible values of service, fellowship, diversity, integrity, and leadership. And those 5 values are our cornerstones. And you've actually raised the bar so high. And the year that I was president and that I was privileged to be with you guys, I will never, ever forget that. And I want to say thank you for it. But I want to also mention, and I mentioned it to the board guys a bit earlier, that you know what, 60 years ago in the newsletter, and I've posted that, I found, and this is something I do all the time, I quite like to know who sits in front of me. They must tell me their stories, because I can tell stories forever and ever. And I love to be part of people. And I found an incredible gentleman, a past president in the Rotary Club of Guyana, that was 60 years ago, sponsored by the Rotary Club of Johannesburg to complete his degree, 2nd and 3rd year. And at the age of 86 years old, he came to PETS. I found him at the Rotary Club of Guyana. He's a past president, and he's been serving 20 years at that Rotary Club. But 60 years ago, the leadership in this club decided we will invest in him. And you have invested in so many incredible human beings and people out there. And I hope part of the centennial will be to find those incredible gems around. Because those guys have a story, to share with you. You've invested in him, and at 86, he's flying the Rotary flag, and he still talks about it. I was like so excited about it when I could share it with the Rotary Club of Johannesburg. So I want to wish you all well, and thank you for having me. Thank you for the first hour in the board meeting. And yes, it's a pity that we don't see more members. And that is a concern for me. And I don't know why. Because passion brings people together. Passion is the glue that holds us together. And I know it's load shedding and it's this and it's all sorts of things. But I want to tell you, to be part of the oldest club on the continent of Africa is a privilege. You have to show up. You have to be part of this incredible history. So I wish you well, grow, have the impact that you've always had and continue to have that. And thank you so much that I could serve when I was part of Johannesburg, and I can still serve this club. And I look forward in working with you, Grace, and your team also in the next year as we roll out Centennial. And David, thank you very much for also popping in, because that's incredible that you're 10 years older than the oldest club on this continent. But Rotary, I want to tell you, has changed our lives, has opened opportunities for us, and may we never forget that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna-Marie. I'm just happy to hear that you admit that your best years in your life so far, the highlight of your life, was when you were in the Johannesburg Rotary Club. I know that. I knew that all the way.
I know. And Hans dragged me out. He dragged me out. He went to Northcliffe. How possible is it that an AG was joining Northcliffe? I can't believe it. He dragged me.
Can I just, another thing, I have to do one better. On my Facebook page is an example of something that our Rotary Club did in 1938. We sponsored somebody through WITS, this guy, Ronald Barker, through his BSc degree at WITS. And we met his brother, 80 years. I can't remember the detail now. His brother, after 80 years, came to our club about 4 years ago. Just to say thank you. He died in the war, okay, in 42, but in 38, our club put him through, or supported him with his BSc degree at WITS, and we met his brother 80 years later or so, when he came to visit our club about 5 years ago. So
you know what, the investment, the investment, you will never understand that investment. It's huge, double and triple. And this club, that specific focus to look for the gems and to support them and sponsor them. Wow. Guys, it's incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, now last but not least, Grace. Any parting words, Grace? Close the meeting.
Thank you, Leon. First of all, I just want to say a very, very big thank you to our District Governor, Anna-Marie, for taking the time out to spend with us. And you had your meeting with us at 6 o'clock this evening, and you still stayed for our general club meeting, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much for joining us. And because we cannot give you a proper bunch of flowers, here is a virtual bunch to say thank you.
On Spring Day, I mean, on Spring Day, I think that we need kind of... Thank you, Grace. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so, so much. And we really look forward to walking your incredible journey with you for the remainder of this Rotary year, because I think being a district governor just opens so many opportunities, and we would love to share all the highlights with you as you go through this year.
Thank you.
Just to recap as well, what Anna-Marie and Leon have alluded to is this club has been instrumental in shaping so many lives over the 100 years that we've been here. And we have a program called EdFac, which is Educational Facilities, that was started in 1936 and still goes very strong. We changed the lives of about 41 children every single year, where we give them the opportunity to further their education. And we walk this journey with them, and they become leaders and shapers and influential people in our community, not just in our communities, but in our world. We currently have a grade 12 student called Ntando, who has already written a book. He's been on TV. He is an advocate for the youth, and he is lobbying corporates to donate tablets and iPhones or use smartphones to township children so that they can continue doing their education. And just this week, we also had, Angela is at a primary school child, where we got her report of an average of 90% that she has achieved. And
Yes,
she's
it was.
one of our leaders that we mentor and that we walk this journey. And 100 years ago, we were supporting people to do great things, and we continue to support people to do great things. And every one of us should be so immensely proud to be part of this amazing club, that we might not have many members on this call tonight, but we do incredible work, and we will continue to do so. So thank you very much for everyone that joined us. President David from London, I've been privileged to attend some of your meetings. I will continue to do so. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy life to join us. Julius, thank you for joining us, and I hope we're going to see more of you. Ntombi, James, and then there was another person that Emmanuel brought along, but I think she's left because of connection problems.
Patricia.
So thank you so much for everybody. Alice, thank you as well for your time and your dedication to Rotary. And without further ado, I will call the meeting closed. Thank you so much, everybody.
If you want to stay and
Thank you,
talk,
Grace.
welcome to.
Okay.
If you want a crunchy, you have to come and visit.
Amazing crunchy.
Thank
Leon,
you.
you need to stay.
Carol. Bye-bye, Peter.
Loving his best life.
Daniel, lovely to meet you. Bye, Leon. Bye, Peter.
Cheers, bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Oh, they're all gone.
The stragglers are still here.
We were up to 19 at one stage.
No, we were.
Wrong side of the computer.
Okay, I've stopped the live stream now.
Okay.
But thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Arnold. And I hope you feel better soon, Arnold. Okay,
Arnold's gone.
He's gone.
Yeah, Alice left and you and me.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Okay, cheers.